Okay, we're going to talk about the cycling of red blood cells, how they're made, what's required, how you recycle the parts. So the process of making a red blood cell, of the cell division process and maturation process that ends up with an erythrocyte, is called erythropoiesis. Erythropoiesis. And it occurs in the red bone marrow. And specifically, it occurs in these types of cells called myeloid stem cells in the red bone marrow. But in order for it to occur, you have to have a few nutrients, specific ones, and then you also have to have a specific hormone. So let's talk about the nutrients first. Not necessarily shown in this picture, but they have to be there or else this is not going to occur. The first one is a B vitamin called folate or folic acid. This is primarily from green plants, from citrus, from liver. There's a whole bunch of foods that are now folate enriched, including a lot of cereals. It is really, really important for DNA synthesis, specifically thymine, prior to cell division. And it's super duper important during periods of rapid cell division, which is always going on in the bone marrow, but also during like pregnancy or infancy or childhood or adolescence, also during times of healing. So because it's not specific to red blood cell cell division, it's for all cell division. They did find out that this is one of the nutrients that is really absolutely necessary for a healthy pregnancy. And so now, for instance, every multivitamin that you would find, a prenatal multivitamin, would have folate or folic acid in it. It helps prevent neural tube defects, but that's related to pregnancy. Now we're talking about erythropoiesis. Okay, so the other nutrient that's needed that's not in this picture is vitamin B12, another B vitamin, and this is primarily from animal products, not necessarily just from meat, because you can also get it from milk products and from eggs. But it is a potential concern for a really, really strict vegan diet because it's hard to find plant sources with really high levels of vitamin B12. Now there's a whole bunch of enriched foods that have added vitamin B12, fortified foods like nutritional yeast. And where do they get the B12 for that? There is some in seaweed, and if you really concentrate it, you can use it. There's also some in certain types of algae, or we can actually chemically synthesize it in the lab now. Okay, now the things that are actually in this picture needed for erythropoiesis are iron. And we know why we need iron, because of course, if we're making red blood cells, we are going to basically be making, by the time they're finished, they're mostly a bag of hemoglobin. Because I don't know if you remember this, but during the process of red blood cell development and maturation, they originally start out as a cell called an erythroblast that has a nucleus and all of the other organelles. But during the process of maturation, they actually eject most of their organelles. So they're kind of just a bag filled with hemoglobin. There's some other stuff in there too, but mostly hemoglobin. So iron is necessary to, of course, make hemoglobin. And hemoglobin is necessary to make a functional red blood cell. The amount of iron that you have in your body is homeostatically controlled. The primary sources of dietary iron are meat, liver, shellfish, egg yolks, beans, nuts, cereal, leafy green vegetables. And what happens is, of course, when you eat it, you're going to absorb it primarily at your intestine. There's several different forms, and they're absorbed in different areas of the intestine. But your gastrointestinal tract can control the rate of absorption based on the body's needs to a certain degree. And then you're always losing iron a little bit via water-soluble forms can be lost through your skin and your urine, and then iron is lost through menstruation in menstruating people. Okay, if you have excess iron in your diet, you store it in your liver. as do other mammals, which is why, for instance, eating liver is a good source of iron. I'm not necessarily saying it's healthy to do so frequently because it's also got tons of cholesterol in it, but it's a good source of iron. Okay. Now, what else do you need? You need a hormone that I didn't teach you yet. I figured you could learn one in this chapter instead of 35 in the endocrine chapter. And this hormone is commonly abbreviated EPO. Its long name is erythropoietin. It's a peptide hormone. It comes from the kidneys and goes to the myeloid stem cells in the bone marrow. And what it does is it causes erythropoiesis, so that you're going to make red blood cells. The cell division and red blood cell maturation that is called erythropoiesis. Your body, a healthy body produces about 2 to 3 million erythrocytes per second, but they're also always getting recycled. So this is a turnover of red blood cells. So question, what is it that makes the kidneys secrete EPO, erythropoietin? It's kind of, I guess it's kind of a humoral feedback because they respond to low oxygen being delivered in the blood to the kidneys by secreting EPO, which is going to cause red blood cell synthesis. And eventually, it's not going to be instantaneous by any stretch of the imagination. Eventually, what that's going to do is more oxygen is going to be carried back to the kidneys. So this is not a quick fix. So what kinds of things could trigger this hypoxia, low oxygen, that is detected in the kidney? Well, a decrease in red blood cells, like if you just gave blood or you just hemorrhaged, then of course there would be fewer red blood cells and therefore fewer hemoglobin ferries carrying oxygen to the kidneys. Or you could have the same number of red blood cells and the same amount of hemoglobin, but you could, like I did, move from Texas to Utah, where there's just less oxygen available in the atmosphere close to me because I'm higher elevation. So at a higher elevation, there's less oxygen available. And so it picks up less. Your red blood cells pick up less on the hemoglobin as they go through your pulmonary capillaries and therefore deliver less to your kidneys. What will happen if your kidneys get that consistent error signal, like when I moved here, they're going to say, this isn't adequate number of red blood cells, we need more. And they're going to do that by communicating via erythropoietin to the myeloid stem cells in the bone marrow. COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, is a big catch-all term that means basically something is causing problems with getting adequate amounts of air in and out. That can cause EPO release. Or if you start exercising very frequently, then the oxygen is going to be used up disproportionately for your skeletal muscles, and that consistent error signal, not just when you exercise once, will eventually tell your kidneys that they need to make EPO to cause more erythropoiesis. Okay, and then the other thing that actually causes erythropoiesis is not in this picture either, and that is testosterone. Testosterone stimulates the kidneys to release EPO in greater numbers than does estrogen. So what tends to happen is that males tend to have more red blood cells per volume than females do. About 1 million more per cubic millimeter, which is the size of a big drop. So males have on average 5.4 million red blood cells per cubic millimeter, and females have about 4.5, so little less than 1 million more. And this is what really accounts for the difference in red blood cell count in males and females. But also it accounts for the difference in hemoglobin because each red blood cell has hemoglobin. So I talked before about the fact that males have more hemoglobin than females. Okay, clinical connections related to this. This whole thing right here is the reason that high altitude training will work. For instance, if you've got an elite cyclist and they're going to train up in Park City, even though they're going to do a bike race in Louisiana. The less oxygen available in the atmosphere will cause them to make more red blood cells. It doesn't happen instantaneously, so you can't go for a day of training. You have to go for weeks to months of training. Is there any such thing as too many red blood cells? Well, yeah, there is. It's called erythrocytosis. There's some other things that can cause it, but one of the ways that you may have heard about that it can be caused is called blood doping, in which, to try to get a competitive advantage in a cardiovascular sport, a person can either dope themselves up with exogenous EPO, or they can, and sometimes do, give their own blood, spin it down, pack the red blood cells, let themselves regenerate the red blood cells from the loss, because we will. Sorry. And then put their own blood cells back in. Either way, those two ways of generating higher red blood cell content than is normally homeostatically derived can lead to too many red blood cells in your vessels, which can cause like really viscous blood, hard to pump, more likely to clot because it's not going very quickly. Now, this medication was developed, exogenous EPO. One of the names for it is Procrit. That medication was developed to help people get over like chemotherapy, because a lot of times you'll kill off your bone marrow and you need actually that oxygen carrying capacity in order to recover. But then once it was actually developed, it was used for sports, not surprising. So EPO has now been genetically engineered, and so we can make it in the lab instead of just the way that they used to get it. Interestingly, was when a person suffered from malaria, the hemolysis that is caused by malaria will really drop the oxygen content, because malaria is an intracellular parasite of red blood cells and it causes hemolysis. It'll really drop the red blood cell content, and when it does that, the kidneys will get a really strong hypoxic signal and they'll generate a whole bunch of EPO. So doesn't sound exactly ethical, but what we used to do was we used to buy the urine of malaria patients and extract the EPO from it. But now we can make it in the lab. Okay, so how do you get rid of old red blood cells? The destruction of red blood cells basically goes like this. They last usually about 120 days. And when they're going around in these teeny tiny little capillaries with like acute angles, they get the crap beat out of them. And they become old and rigid and fragile. And every time they go through the spleen and to a lesser degree the liver, give them a check to see if they've got another round left in them. When they don't, what happens is they get trapped by these macrophages that are in the spleen and the liver, and they do hemolysis. They break them apart, but they recycle the parts. So they split hemoglobin into heme, the iron-containing portion, and globin, and they break down globin into the amino acids and then just dump them into the bloodstream, and you can use them however you want to use amino acids. And then the iron, they dump back into the bloodstream. And then if you need it, you can send it back here. Or if you've got extra, you can actually put it in your liver. Then what is left? Iron plus bilirubin is the breakdown of heme. Bilirubin gets sent to the liver, and you make bile out of it. And then bile, of course, helps with digestion and absorption of fats and that kind of stuff. But the bilirubin, the bile pigment, is also what makes you poop that color and part of what makes you pee that color. So that is all, a lot of it is the breakdown of red blood cells. Okay, we'll do anemia in the next video.